Today, we're going to talk about the incredible life of David Cressy. This is a man whose story is just, well, it's told through the crackle of radio waves. His journey took him through all three branches of the British military, and it was all connected by this single, unwavering thread, a really unique and profound connection to communication technology.
You know, David's life was like a bridge. On one side, you have the rugged, old-school maritime traditions of his hometown, Hull. And on the other, the super-secret world of Cold War electronic warfare. We're going to trace what we're calling his technical lifeline, a career where radio wasn't just some tool, it was his trade, it was a shield, and in the end, it became his lifelong passion.
All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start at the very beginning, with his tough upbringing. Then we'll follow him through his pretty rare triple crown of service, Navy, Army, and the RAF. And finally, we'll see how all those military skills he learned found a new purpose in his civilian life.
So our story kicks off in the maritime heart of Yorkshire. This is where David's character was really forged, you could say calibrated, by the tough, unforgiving discipline of the North Sea.
David was basically born into a world of veteran hull skippers. His father, David Cressy Sr., was a genuine war hero. He commanded these converted trawlers, hunting for submarines and mines, and was decorated for it. You can just imagine the kind of strict, duty-bound atmosphere he grew up in. It really defined him.
And that distinguished service order, it wasn't just a medal sitting on a shelf. No way. It was this constant daily reminder of the incredibly high standard of bravery and professionalism that was just expected of him. That foundation, it would end up shaping pretty much every big decision he ever made.
So there's this story where, as a kid, he took the fall for his brother for something they did. And as a result, he gets sent off to a private naval school. What was supposed to be a punishment, though, totally backfired. In a good way. It became this perfect crucible for him. The school's tough, hands-on, seafaring curriculum was exactly what he needed, and it channeled that rebellious streak into the kind of focused discipline he'd rely on for the rest of his life.
Okay, so now we get to see how that disciplined focus really found its purpose. We're moving into the first leg of his military career, and this is where his technical journey officially sparks to life.
At just 17, David signs up. And what's so important here is that they immediately funneled him right into the technical heart of the Navy, HMS Collingwood. So from day one, he's on this specialist path, learning the very nuts and bolts of a signal, all while serving on one of the most complex warships in the fleet, the aircraft carrier HMS Victorious. Now, this is really clever. See, as a boy's entrant, his 12-year commitment didn't actually kick in until he turned 18. So by leaving just before his birthday, he made this really strategic move. He completely avoided being locked in for over a decade, which kept his options open before the National Service Draft could make the choice for him.
His second crown, that was earned in the British Army, and this would turn out to be the most physically dangerous chapter of his service, a time when his technical gear would literally become his shield.
So choosing the Army on his own terms, David gets deployed right into the Malayan emergency. And what's his job? He's the platoon radio operator. In that dense, hostile jungle, he was the only communications link they had.
You have to understand, the man with the set, as they called him, was a magnet for enemy fire. The insurgents knew that if you take out the radio guy, you could isolate and completely cripple an entire unit. Every single time he transmitted, he was taking a huge risk, making him one of the most vulnerable soldiers out on patrol.
Which, of course, brings us to a life or death question. Imagine you're in a sudden jungle ambush. Bullets are flying everywhere. What could possibly stand between you and a fatal shot? Well, for David, the answer was something he never would have expected.
In the middle of a violent ambush, a bullet hit David square in the back. But instead of finding its mark, it slammed into the solid metal casing of the radio he was carrying. The very piece of technology he was tasked to protect ended up protecting him. His technical lifeline became a literal one in that moment.
His Army career took off, and he was promoted to corporal while serving in Germany and Aden. But that Hull grit of his really came out in Gibraltar. He got into a physical altercation with a superior officer, something born from a real stubborn sense of what he felt was right. It got him busted right back down to private. A definite setback for sure, but it also says a lot about his character.
After a pretty rough return to civilian life, David set out for the final part of his Triple Crown. This time, he entered the super-secretive, high-stakes world of the Royal Air Force during the peak of the Cold War.
So he briefly went back to the Hull fishing fleet, which was a brutally tough job. He even survived his trawler, the Arctic Viking, going down.
But now he had a new wife and 2 young kids. He needed stability. And so he decided to enlist one last time, hoping to find a clearer, safer signal for his family's future.
And this time, he was stepping into the world of signals intelligence, or SIGINT. This was the silent war. It wasn't fought with bullets, it was fought with frequencies. His job was to become one of the listeners, intercepting and decoding the hidden communications of the Soviet Union and its allies.
And man, did he excel at it. He became an elite wireless operator, mastering things like high-frequency direction finding to pinpoint enemy signals. He served in these top-secret units, like 399 Signals Unit at RF Digby, and then later with 9 Signals Regiment down in Cyprus, where they were monitoring the super-volatile Soviet southern flank and the Middle East.
You know, this silent war had very real dangers. In 1968, right there at David's own station, a chief technician named Douglas Britton was arrested for spying for the Soviets. The scandal sent a massive shockwave through the entire intelligence community. It forced a huge security reassessment, and it just underscores the incredible pressure these operators were constantly under.
After a medical discharge from the RAF, David's military service finally came to an end. But his connection to the airwaves? That didn't stop. His passion for radio just evolved into a new kind of public service.
He became a huge part of the 1970s CB radio scene, and his handle, fittingly, was The Listener. That passion pushed him to get his full amateur radio license, and he became G4MQM. He helped start the Grantham Amateur Radio Club, he served as a regional Morse examiner, and he dedicated his skills to RAINIT, the Radio Amateurs Emergency Network.
And this, right here, is where his entire life's worth of experience just came together. In the chaos right after the Lockerbie bombing, all the phone lines were down, official communications were totally overwhelmed. And who stepped in? David and his fellow RAINET operators. Their mastery of radio provided the only reliable link for the rescue efforts. It was just this final, powerful example of his technical lifeline in action.
In the ham radio world, silent key is a respectful way to say that an operator has passed away, that their transmitter has fallen silent. It's a really poignant end to the story of David Cressy, a husband, a father, a Triple Crown veteran, and a true master of the airwaves, who spent his entire life listening for that clear signal. G4MQM 73. Best regards.